An elderly truck and a woman that link. David is a man who lives in the shadows. Prior to Rachel's arrival at his garage looking for a lost Rachel's dreams in spite of her busy existence. Even prosperity and success couldn't satisfy. The desolation of an old vehicle reminded her of her passions and freedom. She was no longer aware of how when a wealthy and a mechanic meet paths, they can. This isn't a truck that brings back lost dreams. It's a story of breaking, not just a race. Untarnished by the traces of the past. And launching a new one. Remember to subscribe. David, there are new stories for you every day. Felt as though time had passed him by. Each morning, while the darkness is still, he was coiled around the streets intoxicatedly, would open the garage door gradually and stand in front of the chilly metal while he positioned. Despite all, his hands on the rusty tools. How many years have gone by since each one was reminding him of anything Clars like following his son's early years, every one of them, were concealed in every fragment of these ancient vehicles in the garage, yet these memories were only shadows of reality. Lost when his son went off to college. When he entered the residence, one had. His voice only reverberated back when he heard it. At him, causing the walls to become silent. These old autos are making more noise inside the house. Had already filled all of David's life, but now the engine's rattling offered him grief instead of tranquility. Every physical object appeared to be a representation of a lost dream. The historical shadows would occasionally go up to him in the garage. It seemed almost like they were patting on his back. He recalled the joyful he and Clara's days of driving those vehicles and experienced the wind on their faces. However, Clara's days were over. Departure had created a vacuum, and when he went back, everything appeared colder and more isolated than previously in. Dav is aware of the old engine's noise. Echoed like the joy he was experiencing. Ever lived, but regardless of how difficult he tried these echoes, but they were unable to bring him tranquility. One morning, as he unlocked he sensed the weight of the garage door. Every day, the past weighed down on him once more. He seemed to bring a bit extra with him. More dejection, loneliness, yet the connection to them. Cars were silent and hadn't broken. He had struck a deal with his history. Every component and every SCW is coming together. Offered him hope that perhaps, just possibly, he may make amends for his past. But in any case, despite his best efforts, he was unable to bring back something that disappeared when David tugged his eyes as the truck entered the garage. Glittered with an ancient heat, he recalled. How alive is this peeling, rusting long? His eyes had once seen an abandoned truck. The possibility that lies beneath this ancient pile. The truck was more than tires of metal. Every rust coating and scratch was a remnants of a passion that once. The chilly and dismal days of the past would resurface in each. A portion of this truck's owner was. He had known an old buddy for many years. A man approached the garage door and questioned David about his suitability for the job. David stated, "This is your job now," just as he recalled that everything had begun with a cycle where you feel lost and came alive all of a sudden at that. As soon as David sensed a disturbance once more within him as he pulled the vehicle into the garage, he rubbed his palms together over each component, being sure to inspect every detail. Time's markings seemed so familiar too. He believed that everything could be resolved. Once more that everything can come back. Back to how this truck used to be in. In fact, he had a fresh start inside of it. Discovered the remnant of a missing object. Everything was returning to him now. He once completed the piece of art that flavor of all that he had produced in each and every detail while examining the truck's engine, recalling how challenging a job it had been before, but now everything seemed different since he wasn't. The old sense of loneliness was no longer there. Being with him, I used to be able to, he told himself, I can do this. Once more, he entered and seized the metal beneath the steering wheel. His hands had the feel of an old acquaintance. He had been waiting a long time to get back in touch with it in order to breathe life into it. Back into it every day that goes by was recalling his previous abilities, the drive, the thrill he experienced when he had the trucks. The engine seemed unwilling to start. David turned the key once, patiently. Once more, but the engine only hummed and fell silent. But he persisted and made it too. E.T. reached into his pocket and produced his old key onto the chilly metal, then took. He inhaled deeply as he unlocked the truck's hood. The chilly air started to permeate. David had performed these types of tasks in the garage. Years of repairs, but this time, the shadows of something was different. The past, where the old thrill seemed to be looking for purpose in this ancient truck. While he examined the engine, something drew his attention. Observed something fall out of his grasp and down to the ground. He stooped down immediately and slowly discovered a picture with trembling. He lifted it up in his hands, and the picture was faded and yellowed. A young girl was beside the truck. She was grinning and showed no signs of worry. She had a look of life in her eyes, focused on her dreams. He researched the picture, but it was blank. David placed the picture in his pocket and briefly closed his eyes. He was filled with passion in that moment. He lost years ago as he tried to speed this truck, brought back memories of his former independence. He was blown through by the wind on the. Back then, racetracks were the center of the universe. Around speed, in every race and journey, was passionate, but regrettably over. When the fervor had subsided, the thrilling times of the past were over. Lost in the midst of obligations and losses life had thrown at him, he gradually take a step back and start looking over the engine once again. This vintage truck formerly hauled the strength that one race provides him with. Liberty, but with time, the cacophony of the wind's roar and the engine had been swapped out for. It was quiet away from the racetracks. Currently, just recollections of the past. Daily habit that is all that remains. His heart was full with loneliness and unfulfilled dreams. But now he gave the picture more thought. The girl smiled despite everything seemed disoriented. Perhaps this was an chance to begin anew. Perhaps restarting this truck wouldn't merely revive the outdated engine, but would revive an extinguished passion. He turned the engine's key again. Didn't make any noise at all, but David wasn't prepared to quit. Gradually, and he thoroughly reviewed each section, making the effort to restore that. He remembered how fervently ancient power he had previously worked on it. But he didn't just like to revive this truck. He desired to change his own life once more, and perhaps he could bring this ancient pickup swiftly return to his life and locate the missing. One morning, hopes of the past will return. A woman's voice when she arrived at the garage made the decision to provide David's lonely a new direction for the globe. When the woman David was standing in front of the garage, still awakening to the first rays of stood by in the morning, exhausted and alone. He was attempting to fix the ancient automobile. Cold air with a strong metal odor within. The humming breeze and the garage stirred. When he heard her, something inside him. He raised his head and took slow, steady steps. The woman was quiet. Despite her grace, her eyes were sorrowful. However, the anguish was so profound that it appeared to contain the remnants of something. Years of loss. As she threw her big David's eyes on a bag over her left shoulder, lingered on her dejected expression. There was something about the emptiness within her, accumulating suffering throughout time. Oddly recognizable elements from the at first look. David thought this. The woman's tale was profound because the woman moved in his direction. The concoction of her voice's warmth and resolve forced David to concentrate all of his energy on. After giving him a kind greeting, she replied, "David, I need assistance with my truck." Nodded. With hesitation, the truck appeared to be almost. The paint on the abandoned trash was peeling. The tires appeared to have exploded, and the engine refused to start. But based on this look in the woman's eyes, the truck wasn't simply any old car too. "David, you mentioned that you wanted to fix it," uttered in a slightly sarcastic tone. The woman nodded in an inquiring tone, somewhat, and went on, "Yes, this truck. It has a connection to my past, crucial position in my life. Yet I don't wish to stop using it. I only want to get over my past and move on." David gradually became aware of the tremor in her voice. His hands moving, he looked over the truck, over the metal's chilly surface. He said, "Your past, but the important." The expression in her eyes told him to stop. The woman needed to ask inquiries, so she took a big breath and started talking after. This truck used to be the only thing that made my fantasies come true. I wanted to construct something when I was younger. I started driving out of town in this pickup. Grew up traveling to far-off locations. This truck has shaped my entire life. I learned how to find my own freedom from it. Route. But then everything in my life changed. Made a lot of money and had everything I ever wanted. Corporation made millions of dollars, but there's a void within me when everything seemed excessive, and I felt like something was lacking. Retain the memories of this with me forever. Truck, it makes me think of a piece of myself. That's gone, but I'm not sure what. David stared into her eyes, wondering what to do. She seemed to have drawn something from him following Rachel's remarks. Recalled the lost dreams from his own history. When he owned the truck, it appeared to be a vestige of an earlier dream. It was so alive, much like the inner passions of the lost. The voice of Rachel rose a little, although it's difficult. She still appeared a little lost. I've given a lot of time to let this go. I took that with me when I traveled the world. Truck, a lot of things occur in my life. However, now that it seems to be finished, I possess it all, but I don't feel like. There was a pause before anything was left. Rachel's maelstrom of emotions appeared to bring back a long-lost aspect of her. David realized how challenging it must be for someone like powerful woman who had accomplished so much to continue feeling an inner nothingness, as he became aware of that not going for his own long-held dream was the underlying reason for his own inner emptiness. He recalled how he had also gone through disappointments as well as losses as soon as he began repairing. David had stepped into the truck. Something. It was more than just a job. Tale of the arrival of two lost spirits, jointly to discover their pasts and attempt to touch life once again. Rachel saw David's concentrate, then slowly say, "Just help me. This is not necessary, but I would like to put the past behind you and finish something and begin a new one. I believe you can succeed." Deep down, David knew that he wanted to hang out with this more woman. It was more than just repairing a truck. It had to do with touching someone's. They had lost the pieces of their dreams. Was recognizing the intricacy of life and how we individually look for the components that can occasionally be lost. He discovered Rachel wasn't merely abandoning an elderly truck, but within it were her lost dreams as well. Her hardships, setbacks, triumphs, and the void that ensued had brought. The truck had served as a symbol to bring them together. Of all her previous sufferings and dreams. However, this truck might have been just the... David looked at her and nodded in the beginning. I'm able to solve it, but there's... While doing this, Rachel, perhaps, with this truck, you'll be reborn in a sense. Transform my life, Rachel responded, a little bit of... She had a sense of nostalgia. Words, her gaze strayed off in the distance as though she attempted to remove the dust from the years and remember every single moment of it. Began with this truck, which makes me think of independence from what I've lost and from my hopes. Rachel's sorrow seeped into David's. The truck that had caused severe damage to her history abruptly changed from simply a vehicle becomes a dream symbol. This truck had seen the fight. Rachel's life's pivotal moments each. Every journey has a fresh start. Lost repairing and transporting this truck. Returning to life was more than a Rachel's mechanical work. She hoped that by giving this car a new life, she might possibly restore the missing fragments of herself in each and every word that Rachel said. What she said forced David to confront his own background. Struck a chord with him similar to the echoes of a lost dream. He put his hand softly on the greasy metal sections. It seemed as though he wasn't only repairing the vehicle, but also healing his own life's lost dreams. Like Rachel, he had once desired to pursue his aspirations while he was younger. Desired to experience the racetrack's wind. Savor the flavor of freedom and speed. Find his own path, but life comes first. Never offered him the opportunity to cling to a child from that passionate marriage. And then, years of hardship gradually removed his dreams about Clara's sickness in the home. Cost for his son's future. All of these factors erased David's. He had to put his interests and dreams there. Putting aside time each day to having survived, but now appearing before Rachel made him think of that old David's enthusiasm and those dashed hopes. He briefly closed his eyes while traveling. He went back to those earlier times, when he was younger. His fantasies were full with pace, recalling the pounding of his heart. On the racetrack, in the vehicle, how he felt that anything could happen, with his eyes glowing brightly, but then the light gradually began to dim. Years had gone by, and life had, surrounded by one after the other, him with routines and obligations. Rachel's remarks moved. It seemed as though David had discovered his soul, once more the lost passion inside of him. Now, he sensed the lost dreams within. He was that old David again, a courageous young man who would take a chance, all to still fulfill his aspirations. In the depths of Rachel's wish to fix the truck had made him think of the David reflected on the lost aspects of his life. For a brief moment, Rachel and time appeared to halt. Moment I heard it. I was overcome with emotion. Spoke with a heavy sigh in his voice. I previously desired to live out my dreams as well. However, life made me a variety of things. Rachel watched me stroll this trail by myself. She looked at him and understood that he was still able to locate those lost dreams. Within himself, they perceived a glimpse of the past might be found in the lost. Hopes brutally destroyed by life grow again just by keeping those in mind. What may those ancient dreams be? Reborn David inhaled more deeply, but he began to feel so lost this time. Enthusiasm that once filled him with hope. Once more, he stated, as the days, my dreams appear to vanish after that, like a faraway recollections. But after hearing what you've claimed, that such repressed emotions have returned in, I feel as though I've discovered everything. Maybe I can fulfill my desire once I'm lost. Once more, a slight grin emerged on. Perhaps she said that in Rachel's face is actually a method for locating everything. It is only conceivable to relive those previous dreams by embracing them again with courage. Perhaps by supporting one another, we can rekindle those dashed aspirations. David noticed he saw a fresh brightness in Rachel's eyes. That making his aspirations come true wasn't limited to repairing the truck. Was a kind of resurrection. The suffering and the past losses would be abandoned, paving the path for a fresh start. The difficulties and hardships that life had bestowed upon him would now function as a guide for both of them. And David realized at that very instant, a change was about to occur in his life as he fixed every component of the. Maybe he would also fix the truck. Portions of life would never be easy for him, but holding on to life while pursuing lost dreams, once again, and supporting one another could just be the most crucial action we can take. David stated unequivocally that we have to give ourselves an opportunity to our dreams. Rachel gave a small nod. She smiled and said, yes, we can succeed. As the days went by, an unspoken a relationship developed between Rachel and, at first, David invited everyone together to fix an ancient truck. These two individuals started to influence one another's lives more. Rachel hadn't come merely to fix anything, really. Her truck, she was looking for a lot of. She was looking for the joy more, the passion and freedom that were gone. This truck brought back memories of all that had been lost during the years. She was adamant on doing whatever it takes to restore the previous objectives that had restored her life's purpose and the unrestrained spirit that had previously given her. David, however, started finding his own lost dreams again via his compassion for Rachel's. Every moment spent with her was a story, rekindling his remaining desires. Despite his best efforts, he had lost Rachel's. Losses and hardships brought back memories of his own whenever they collaborated on it. Felt as though they weren't merely repairing the truck, and they were locating the fragments of themselves that had long been gone. The truck was no longer exclusively for Rachel, but also a second birth for David. Chance one night, after completing the truck all day, Rachel abruptly shifted her focus to David's. Eyes glistened with I'd like to enter a race in a different light. She claimed that her voice conveyed such conviction that it provided him with the bravery to respond the way she did. Been anticipating that perhaps my truck isn't not yet completely recovered, but we must take this trip once more. We must discover that. David froze with the ancient thrill of independence. There was so much significance for a brief moment. In Rachel's words, that his thoughts turned into a race that was more. Rachel was attempting something more than a truck racing, to restore the happiness she had suppressed. Years to recover the liberty she previously believed. That race was more than just. It was like being reborn in the truck, conquering dreams, hopes, and even fears. David understood that this suggestion wasn't. It was only about racing the truck, regarding affecting a life and facing the past while making a strong move forward. Rachel gave David a hopeful glance. A slight smile is developing in her eyes. What do you believe David's face could be? The best present this truck could offer us is a trip back to our former. Something inside David roused his dreams. Seemed like a long-awaited chance. His lost enthusiasm was being rekindled by Rachel, giving him that familiar thrill. Once more, competing in a race wasn't only about. It was tracing the remnants of the past. A chance for a fresh start. His own bravery had been inspired by Rachel's. Perhaps you're correct. David mentioned an old shine coming back to his eyes after speed. Freedom and that thrill meant. I lost everything, but I'm moving on. On this adventure with you. Perhaps this is a opportunity to locate all I've misplaced. With a gleam of hope in her eyes, Rachel. Eyes, we must do this, she urged. Regardless of how much time it takes for my truck to be completely recovered. I want to experience that thrill of having freedom once more united. We ought to go down that old road and find that everything is still. David might have noticed Rachel's strength and resolve took a deep. Whatever he breathed before the race, had imagined would give him a sense of bringing the lost back to life. Freedom, passion, and assurance that it wasn't only about repairing. There were two lost souls in the truck, clinging to life once more. Okay, David remarked with a resolute expression. We must travel that path together in order to experience the thrill of capturing. This race may not be that old freedom, simply a trip, but a chance to restore our trust in ourselves. Thus David and Rachel did simply enter a race that turned into a path to face and regain the past, dreams lost, and perhaps even revisit the freedom they had previously overlooked. The truck had evolved into more than just a car, but a secret to locating their souls once. More about their truck on the day of the race. Didn't appear to be as strong as the other decrepit, outdated cars that are transporting the years where it appeared as if it was unable to stay up with the current race. Automobiles, but the internal decision. Above all, David and Rachel were there for. This race wasn't merely a competition, which served as a means of rediscovering the dreams lost to abandon the truck's previous burdens were more than it contained only rubber and metal. Years of stifled longing for liberty. The echoes of the passion of a life lost. The bright metal of other racers. Strong engines and bodies grinned. With assurance, there were derisive glances in their gazes upon seeing the truck. David and Rachel could practically read there, pondering what this outdated garbage will do. But they were unconcerned that there was something that was greater than anything they owned, released from the burden of the past, and had started to dream about this race once more. It was not about winning, but rather the journey they were traveling together, the guts to follow the lost interest as the engine started to hum as the race started, combined with David's beating, and they rushed ahead, Rachel's hearts, and amid the gravel road's cacophony and despite the wind's scream, a smile emerged on Rachel's expression, which she knew would be imprinted in her mind as the instance. Years later, she would desire to go back. There, as the vehicle thundered down the street, was not limited to words between Rachel and there was a connection between David and they wanted to take this after their eyes met. Travel together in search of the lost. Dreams together, but regrettably the truck broke down. Suddenly, the engine made a sudden noise. The vehicle appeared to give up when it stopped. And stopped. David and Rachel stared at one another in disbelief, uncertain whether. As the other racers rushed by, what should I do? Their emotions were brimming with annoyance, but this wasn't an excuse to. Giving up together, they started to fix the truck in the nighttime darkness. This pair worked on their abilities under the stars. Vehicle that is becoming stronger every moment of mutual trust they experienced when fighting the darkness and the noise of each. That sounded like the echoes of a long-forgotten dream. Rebirth. And when they were done, they had the truck operating once more as the first rays of morning broke through They returned to the race the next day when, at last, they made it across the finish line. They finished 40th, however, for them. This was not merely a triumph. It wasn't the truck's triumph, but together, they spent the night providing support. They provided for one another out of desperation, fixed the vehicle and the recovery of their unrealized dreams, which were the actual triumph in which they had not only taken part, a race that had abandoned the suffering of the past, the defeats, and embark on a fresh start together. At the conclusion of the racing, David and Rachel smiled at each other, observing one another with a smile on. Rachel's expression wasn't merely an indication of triumph, but a manifestation of valuing each and every moment of life. Now, the truck was more than just an old car. It served as a representation of their new, the start of the search for the lost. Dreams. Observing David with intense, Rachel said, with meaning in her eyes, "Sometimes, winning isn't the goal." Roughly, her participation conveyed a reality that transcended triumph, in that Rachel and David had discovered something that they had retained from their inhabits the bravery to dream once more in the faith in one another's. Success was not longer about a location or a period of time. That was about falling in love, trusting, and revival of forgotten dreams. David and Rachel saw this contest as the triumph of surviving once again, taking a risk and moving forward, without looking for the past that was lost. At last, Rachel and David made the decision to construct a new life together, fixing the ancient vehicle was only the start of. During their trip, the vehicle wasn't merely tires and metal served as a representation of lost nightmares, the suffering and losses of the past, but it strengthened their bond, releasing people from historical wounds and getting them ready to construct a future. When combined, the vehicle was no longer merely a vehicle, but a representation of letting go of the past responsibilities and setting sail for a new existence. They gazed at one another's eyes full of more than just hope for this path, but for life itself, possessing mended their life's most severe scars. Considering a straightforward task like repairing it, they had restored their trust in the aging truck. It was a simple thing that had shown to them the value of creating a life together, letting go of the suffering, and how to enjoy each and every second of life. David glanced at Rachel once more and recognized the significant changes after years of loneliness, dreams that are lost, and the signs of every moment. The past was set aside. Devoted to Rachel had transformed him into I want to be a stronger, more optimistic person. David said gently, "Do this with you." I'm hugging Rachel because I'm no longer alone. With you, Rachel, I can dream once more. Take this voyage without carrying any burdens. Solely with you, Rachel, but not with the past. To David's remarks with a profound inner tranquility, I'm aware that she stated. We're carefully looking into David's eyes, preparing to embark on a new adventure. When combined, this vehicle represents more than just the past aspirations, but also the future. The past suffering will be forgotten. Together, we will track down the lost. Again, they both dreamed at that precise time, became aware that they had discovered a new purpose in one another's life, not only by an outdated truck, but by bearing the responsibilities from the past and the future. With each step they had found their dashed hopes and fortified their trust in one another. They were examining not only the past, but also the future. Wasn't merely providing new hope, was providing them with a opportunity to live a new life. Rachel and David started each day together. Go together, the vehicle would transport them further distant from the suffering of the past with every new day. Enhancing their relationship with this truck would travel with them on all their journeys, turning into a representation of their lost dreams. Were now meaningful in every way. The lost dreams and the pains of the past and the unmet expectations have been revitalized by this fresh start. They embraced one another. This trip wasn't simply about having a car or getting to A. Eventually, the goal was to construct a new, escape the shadows of life together. the past while anticipating the hope for the future. The vehicle had become into the resurrection of all that was lost in their hearts, a fresh start for the future. After letting go of the suffering from the past, and everything changed when Rachel embraced David. Appeared so easy and significant, they were no longer together. They would construct a new life by combining the historical and the truck would eventually represent departing behind the historical suffering and the dreams lost while also assisting them in create a positive future with every journey. Would have the truck with them. To lead them into the future was not. It would be a story if it were longer uncertain. Rachel and David were built together, prepared to pursue their unfulfilled dreams, and this voyage was just the start of. If you like this tale, please don't forget to click like for more motivational tales. Sign up for my channel and be careful to activate alerts remain on our system for a new adventure each day. Many thanks.